Hi Rahul, how are you?
Good. How are you, Rohini? Good to be here.
It's good. It's a beautiful sunny day, so I can't complain. And thank you so much for, taking time out of your Saturday to do this conversation about living with lockdown with me. And before we go into the actual meat of that conversation, I think it would be really nice if you could introduce yourself to our viewers.
Sure. Hello, everyone. Hope you're having a good Saturday and staying safe and keeping well. I am Rahul Mishra. I am a person who lives a life in music. So I'm a singer-songwriter based in London with roots in India. And I also work professionally for a music organization. And I'm here to talk with Rohini on living with lockdown.
So cool. And we're going to talk a little bit about your, your current sort of joint, I suppose, role of being a singer-songwriter and working in a more mainstream job. But we can talk about that a little bit later on. So tell me, Rahul, how has lockdown affected you personally? Because I'm imagining that it's affected the way you work, but it's also maybe affected your personal life in some ways. So would you like to share with us what it's done for you?
Yeah, I think what I would say is that this isn't a completely new situation for me. Um, Having to be in charge of your own time and setting up a routine for yourself, that's something that I have been accustomed to in previously as well. So I took, after working in London for uh, several years in the finance industry, I actually took the plunge to dive into music full time. And that's when I took 2 years off to go back to India and work on my first album. And that was when I discovered that, um, it is possible to sort of spend your time productively if you structure your time and your thoughts, and your day has a sort of ebb and flow. So having done that for a couple of years between 2016 and 2018, it's not a completely new situation for me to be at home and to be working from home. Having said that, obviously the context is completely different. I mean, we're in such a sort of unprecedented situation globally, and there is something really humbling and very human about what we're going through right now. So things have changed for me. So I'm obviously working from home and spending most of my time here. Uh, but yeah, I am used to it from previous phases of my life.
So it's not been a massive change, is what I'm sensing. Like,
It's been a change in the sense that it's been an immediate change. I work for a music organization called the National Youth Orchestra of Great Britain, and we're based in central London. And I'm used to going to office every day, commuting at rush hour, and the works, you know. But what I'm saying is that there's been a previous phase, a couple of years, where I was actually, working independently on my own music as a singer-songwriter, which I continue to do on the side. So I sort of plugged into that energy of, sort of diving deep inside yourself and just being able to, yeah, spend time with yourself.
sure. I think that there was a number of interesting things in that, bit that you talked about. So I want to make sure I don't forget them. So first of all, you mentioned that you were, working in London in finance. So I'm imagining it was a job that was a far cry from where you are today. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a sort of a trained economist and finance person, but that's something I did academically from university and through my school years. But my real passion was always music. For the past 15 or 16 years, I have had these two tracks in my life, which is the more practical and um, uh, pragmatic side of things, which is finance, and then there's been music. I worked as an investment consultant for many years in the city of London, And after becoming sort of, financially a little bit independent and having some sort of cushion for myself, I decided to take that plunge and make my passion for music my full-time career. So that's what I have done over the last couple of years. So I've taken my finance background and kind of merged it with my passion for music. So that's that's how I work for the National Youth Orchestra of Great Britain. I work as the finance officer. So those two things have come together over the last couple of years for me.
That sounds so neat, because I think, there's probably lots of people who are listening to you thinking, yeah, I'm doing this corporate job because I have to, because, that's what pays my bills, but my heart is somewhere else. Maybe I'm passionate about music, or it could be something else. And I think a lot of people sort of feel that those things have to just stay separate, that there's a place for this job and you don't have to love it because it's a means to an end, whereas maybe in your spare time you can to your heart's content do what your passion tells you to do. So what was it that made you feel that that was not good enough, that you didn't want to stay in that kind of twin track role?
I think it was about being true to myself and true to my values, really. um, I did live this double life of, working a very high stress finance job in the day, and then playing in bands and performing on weekends. And I've done that for years. And I just felt at some point that those two sides of me had to sort of merge. And I wanted to live a life which is creative and a life in music. And that's really what drove me to do this. So what I can do now is, my day job is helping other musicians, other young musicians, pursue their passion for music. And alongside that, I'm pursuing my own music as well. So I write and perform my own music, and those two things neatly go together for me. So it's something about just being true to your own self, I think. Yeah.
And I think, what I really like about that way of thinking is that you haven't abandoned what you learned in your previous career, because a lot of people feel that, oh, I hated that and I'm just going to consign that to my history and I don't ever want to do that again. But what you've done is you've taken that knowledge and you brought it into a field that really resonates with you. So I think that's really a really powerful message for most people out there who feel that maybe whatever they've learned over their life, that had a use by date, and that now they have to start all over again, which can be quite scary. And the other thing that's coming to me is that, to make a living from just being a musician is really hard, isn't it? Especially if you want to do it the way your heart tells you, which is be a singer-songwriter. And we know that there are so many amazing musicians who are struggling for money. So I kind of sense that, here you are helping them to maybe become more successful through your role in this organization, but also you're taking the pressure off yourself, that your music is still something you can do, but you're not relying on it to generate an income that you can earn. Is that right?
That's absolutely right. I mean, I won't just say being a musician, just being a creative person, someone who wants to do something which is out of the mainstream. I think what it requires is for you to build a financially sustainable model for you to be able to do that. And it's a work in progress. You have to see how things change as well as your career goes on. So yeah, I do think it's taken that pressure off me, because I want to do a certain kind of music which is quite niche. So I write music which is in the genre of modern folk fusion. So sort of bringing together my, indigenous Indian identity and my Indian roots, bringing that together with my sort of globalized, just the fact that I've grown up studying in English and lived in the UK for so many years now, and interacted with people from so many different cultures and countries. So all that has affected my the music that I write. So it's quite niche, and I'm trying to explore that that side of me through my music. So I don't want to put like financial pressure on that and say that that has to be what helps me pay my bills.
Yes.
So it's for anyone out there who's trying to um, be artistic and creative. I think it's important to keep the pragmatic side of things in mind as well.
I think that's really good advice. Now, I notice you have your guitar in the background, so
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to maybe, you performing a song or two for us during this conversation. I think that would be really
Sure. Yeah.
cool. So there was something else. I think you mentioned you have an album that you released in when you were in India. What's the album called, and can it be found on the usual places?
So this was actually a project that I ran in India for those 2 years that I was on sabbatical. It had an interesting name. The project was called Inquiry Commission. So it was all about sort of going inwards and sort of discovering the world inside and relating that to the world outside. So the album's name is actually called Conflict of Interest. And the the project was different from what I'm doing now. So the sound is also much more like it sounds like a band, because I was playing with a band at the time. What I've done over the last 2 years, in once I've come back to London, is I've sort of gone down the solo singer-songwriter route. So you'll find me performing just with me and my acoustic guitar. So my recent sounds can all be found on Instagram, SoundCloud, Facebook, YouTube, all under my handle, which is Mishra Music, which perhaps we can put in the link to
Yes,
this or whatever.
definitely.
And
And
so yeah.
yeah, just for viewers to know, I've actually been to a couple of Rahul's live performances, and he's brilliant. I absolutely loved your music, especially your own original songs. So coming back to sort of lockdown, and I'm particularly interested in the working from home bit, because I understand that on a personal level you probably created a lovely discipline, and the ability to go with the flow, but also have some sort of structure, which is a great skill, by the way. Not everyone has it. But working from home in an environment where maybe the team that you work with has probably never had a situation where everyone's like remotely placed all over the place, how have you as a team dealt with this challenge?
Yeah, so that's been interesting actually. The first couple of weeks that we all went into working from home, I think everyone was really charged up to sort of, get into it and really um, change all the systems so that we know that we can make it happen and we're productive from home and so on and so forth. So I think the first couple of weeks just went in that, especially for me, because I work on the finance processes for the organization that I'm part of. So it was all about building efficient processes that we can use in this time that we're working remotely. So it was a lot of energy went into automating processes, and then being able to how do you say, like, everything was made electronic and digital rather than physical. The interaction between us, the way paperwork was done, completely changed. So a lot of energy in the first couple of weeks went into that. But then, yes, maybe perhaps there was a phase after that that you feel that, oh yes, things have changed, and we are not in the same space, and we're all, literally seeing each other on our computer screens as a two-dimensional image. So that is a completely different way of interacting with your colleagues. So at times you do feel, I do personally do feel like it would be good to have that human connect and be in the same meeting room at times. But I think we've rallied around this situation, which is so unprecedented, in such a positive way that has been the biggest takeaway for me. That humans, I mean, I'm talking because of my experience with the people I work with and my family and my friends. We all adapt to new situations quite easily. Like, humans adapt very quickly, and uh, that's been one of the takeaways for me from this lockdown. That in challenging times, people can come together and you know, work together.
Yeah. And I think you're right about the whole connection thing, because it's interesting that, even though this technology has been around for a while, that suddenly now I don't know about you, but do you find that you're connecting with disparate family members a lot more now through technology than you were maybe doing when you could potentially have gone and visited them more often?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been so much more in touch with my immediate family, my extended family, and my friends. A lot of friends who we hadn't spoken in months or even years, and we've all found time for each other, and made that effort to kind of find that bond and connection again. So that's been a real positive, I think, and I've seen that with everyone I've been talking to as well. They all say that this has kind of just instinctively pushed everyone to kind of come together a lot more.
Yeah. And tell me, in terms of you personally, because I know you've done a lot of inner work, and, you talked about your project, the album, about going within, has this particular global crisis brought any fresh insights for you?
To be fair, if I'm being absolutely honest, I, I I just don't know how things are going to change. I'm just trying to live in the moment as it is. But I do feel like that point I said about all of us adapting quite quickly. I think that's been the takeaway for me. And another thing I would say is that the lockdown seems to be pushing people to connect, firstly, and also collaborate a lot more.
Yes.
So those two things are the insights that I'm getting from my interactions with people. I think the fact that commerce and the commercial aspect of things has taken a back seat means that all of us are kind of looking to what's there if we're not you know uh, running behind the next thing to do, or the next holiday, or the next restaurant to eat at, or the next thing that we want to buy or experience. And it's become much more basic. So I think humans are connecting and collaborating a lot more, at least in the artistic community. I've seen that people are so open to each other suddenly, and it's really heartening to see. And people we're all finding time to kind of find out about what the others are up to as well. So yeah, those are some of my insights. I
Yeah,
think.
no, I
Yeah.
think I really agree with you on the connection and collaboration. Now, I have a question with regards to the creative industries, especially music, and you work for the National Youth
Youth
Orchestra.
orchestra. Yeah.
Now, obviously, those events tend to be live events, don't they, where people pay to come and join. As they're kind of part of their finance team, I'm sure this is something that you're all grappling with. Um, how do you see your industry in particular, not just your organization, but the music industry, adapting to a world where maybe people are going to be nervous about being around, others who may or may not have a, certain infection? How do you see that evolving?
um yeah, I think the first thing I'd say is that we shouldn't really jump the gun and try to come to solutions very quickly. We have to keep in mind that it's been about, depending on which country you're in, it's been about a month to 6 weeks, or maybe 2 months somewhere, that you're kind of dealing with this new normal. Um, so I think it's something to wait and watch and develop solutions that are considered, and not something which is kind of like, let's just jump into the next thing that sounds like a the next best solution to engage with our customers and clientele. So I think I would say that perhaps it's too soon to say how what the solutions are.
Yeah.
But it's more about engagement. I think engaging with your stakeholders. I think that is the main thing, and that is across everything, whether you're working independently, whether you're part of an organization, whether you're a non-profit or for-profit enterprise. I think this is a time that perhaps should be used to remain engaged with your stakeholders, and the solutions, I think, will come out of that engagement.
Yeah, I think that's very
in particular, to answer your question, yes, I mean, to like live music events and stuff, obviously that's out of the question at the moment, and who knows where things are going to go from here. But it's been good to see that lots of organizations, including the one that I work for, we've adapted and taken to the digital platform quite swiftly, and in a somewhat like considered way as well. Not just to try and do exactly what we do in a physical space in a digital space, but trying to see how it can be tailored to suit the platform that you're using.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about how you're coping with being cooped up, because I understand that it's probably not that alien to you because you're somebody who's quite comfortable being in your own space, but how are you personally finding the inability to go out maybe for a cup of coffee or to a restaurant? How do you keep yourselves amused?
Yeah, so obviously the music helps. So I've been doing a lot of fresh writing and lots of new ideas coming up. It's just that there's so much more energy when you're not commuting every day. You just have that sort of pent up energy you don't know what to do with, so it's nice to have a release through music. But a couple of other things that I've been doing, I've become much more interested in cooking suddenly. Me and my partner, we're like, we are experimenting with a lot of new recipes and kind of putting our creative energies into that space. So that's quite nice and therapeutic, and it makes you think, like how much money and resources are spent going out and eating out and stuff. So it's a very new thing for like my generation. I think since my 20s, I've been very used to sort of going out for brunch and then going out for drinks and then this and then that. You constantly have that on your agenda, and suddenly to be told that you can't do any of that. You got to cook your own food, and you need to be conscious of where your food's coming from and all of that. So I guess that's been a way of amusing ourselves as well. Yeah, for sure.
Learning new skills.
Yeah. And fortunately in the UK, we are allowed to step out for some exercise. I know I have folks in India who aren't able to do that, and I don't envy them at all. It's nice to be able to step out for some fresh air once a day and just stretch your limbs and just, stay in good physical health as well, because that affects your mental health. Yeah.
Couldn't agree more. I think we are blessed in that respect, aren't we? We've got more spaces and more green spaces as well. So I recall you did this very cool cover song for this particular time in lockdown. Would you like to play that for us? I think our viewers would love it.
I mean, so I wrote that in the first couple of weeks where I was trying to just, make sense of what was happening around us. And the song is the classic I Will Survive, which I'm sure lots of people have heard. I just did a version which was sort of tailored to the social distancing situation that we're all living through. So yeah, if you just give me a minute, I can just set that up.
Sure.
Can you hear me?
Yeah? Yes, thank you.
First I was afraid, I was petrified. Kept thinking I could never live if I didn't socialize. But then I spent so many nights just thinking how that would be wrong. I grew strong. I learned how to get along. Oh yeah, we will survive. As long as we know how to love, I know we'll stay alive. We've got all our lives to live. We've got all our love to give. We will survive. We will survive.
Yay! That's fabulous. Thank
Just
you
a
so much.
short cover.
I love it. I love how you played with the words and, made them current. Yeah, that's so good. Thank you for doing that. So I'll wait till you put your guitar away. And for those of you watching, that sound quality probably did not do Rahul singing justice. So please do listen. Have you got this on your Insta or something?
Yeah, it is on my Instagram handle. Maybe I'll do a full version.
Yes, do.
The next
I
few
think that'd
days.
be so good. Yeah, do a full version of the full song. And we also have Rahul very kindly agreed to do one of his own songs towards the end of our conversation. But I think what I'd like to do is maybe continue to talk about, you're obviously an economist, in your old life, you were probably asked to make forecasts and things. And although it's a dangerous game to make forecasts, but I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit and ask you to think about what you see the new normal looking like for us, as a world, as humanity. Where do you see this current crisis taking us, say in the next 12 months to 2 years?
Yeah, I think I'm really not an expert. So, I mean, if you would ask me, I would say that people are going to reassess how they want to structure their working lives. Perhaps when we do go back into a more normal situation where there isn't a lockdown, but there might be a few restrictions on, how people come together. I think people are going to think about, do they really want to commute at the same time every day at rush hour? Does it make sense for everyone in a city to be traveling at the same time? I think that's something that could change.
Yeah.
That people might reassess, these. I don't want to be too rebellious, but what I'm saying is, like, we don't always have to follow the rules that have been laid down for us for the past whatever years, 60, 70 years of capitalism. So yeah, perhaps maybe flexible working could be something that comes out of this, in which people look after their health and both physical and mental health as they grapple with this virus, which probably isn't going away very soon, right? I mean, even if the lockdown comes to an end, we're all going to have to find new solutions to be able to have a functioning economy, but then also be able to take care of ourselves as people. So yeah. I think that's something that could change. That just a bit more flexibility in how we structure our working lives, and the fact that so many organizations have now experienced working remotely. So maybe people work from home once or twice a week or something like that. Maybe that's something, but I really don't know at a more bigger picture level how the world is going to change. I have no idea. That's up to, the people who are in power.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's always a mug's game trying to forecast something, because you're inevitably going to be wrong. But I do find what's interesting is that because we're all in this together, this is probably the first time in living memory that something has actually impacted every single person on this planet. Maybe some countries are still yet to really experience the impact, but we know that no one will be spared in that sense. And I think in a sense it allows us to tear up all the old rules because we're not competing anymore, that if we do this, but they're still going to be doing something else, and I can think of many issues where that's always been the barrier. Like, if you talk about CEO pay, like, oh, but if we don't pay our CEOs, they'll go to someone else. And it feels in a way freeing, doesn't it? That actually everyone has to now deal with this. And like you, I think I hope very much that a different way of working will become the norm. I want to ask you in terms of leadership, because I'm curious to know whether the kind of leadership something like this working environment needs, in your organization. Have you noticed that your leaders have had to change gears or change the way they lead? Because they no longer have all their people there to kind of almost, not micromanage, but, to see who's coming in and who's not and all that. What's your take on that?
Yeah, so my experience has been really positive. I think it's a new situation for people in senior management, people who are not in senior management. It's a new situation for everyone. So I think the key thing is that if people have empathy and if people have a positive attitude, I think that's what's worked for our organization until this point, and we want to keep doing that in the weeks and months to come, because the challenges are not going away. So I think maintaining that level of empathy with each other, so it's been quite positive for me, and I would be curious to see how things have worked for other people in other sectors as well.
Yeah, no, I think it will be interesting, and I think that from what I can see, it's also demanding individuals to take greater leadership of their own role.
Yes, absolutely.
In the old days, maybe they could just sit there and wait for someone to tell them what to do, but now they're being asked to, basically in their own space, to take ownership of their job.
Yeah, I think there are those positive things like trust as well. I mean,
yes,
trusting each other and building that connecting becomes that much more, because you're not in the same space, you need to put in that much more effort to connect with others. And that's sometimes a good thing, because then you go out of your way to, check in with others, or, how's it going and all that sort of stuff. So
yeah. So I've sort of maybe just moving away from your specific organization to bigger picture question about the industry you used to work in, which was finance, where it's probably known for people doing extremely long hours and being seen to be doing stuff. Do you still have contacts in the industry? How are they dealing with this current situation?
It's been interesting. I mean, I have had a couple of Zoom catch-ups with my ex-colleagues who are good friends. So I think it is challenging for people in the finance industry. It's just such a new normal, right? Like so I think I don't think there's a constant in like all of the whole industry is dealing with it the same way or anything, but I think slowing down is not easy for everyone, so I think everyone's going through their personal journey of how they adapt. So I don't really know exactly what's going on in the finance industry anymore, because I'm not part of it, but I do feel like it's tougher for them to slow down, because it compared to the financial crisis of 2008, this is even more like a cliff edge, because over there was some time to sort of react to the changes that were happening in the market and the economy and so on, but here it's just been like a sudden change. So let's see how things go.
So from a personal perspective, I think that's a very interesting point you make about, when you've been sort of in an industry or a job that's go, you have to like constantly be on the move. To suddenly stop and slow down, it's almost, there's a visceral reaction to that, because you don't know how to deal with it. Now, you personally obviously took that step yourself. You decided to step off that particular treadmill and slow down. And I appreciate that your motives for doing that were different to maybe so. But how did you achieve that? How did you go from that fast-paced working life to feeling comfortable with a slower pace and stillness and all that?
Yeah. So I think that's completely because it suits my personality more. I think if you're enjoying like the fast-paced lifestyle, and if you're enjoying what you do, then there's my friends who are still in finance. I actually look up to them. I'm like, that's great, man. I mean, you're enjoying what you do, and that's so I think it shifted for me quite naturally because I wanted to find a space which was more true to my values. And I think sustainability is one thing that I want to build a long-term career in the arts and music. So uh, I just saw it that way, that if I can make that shift earlier rather than later, then it would help me in the long term.
Sure. When you
And
said
I
something,
I I took solace in the fact that if you're building a long-term career over like 30 years, 35 years to come, then a year or two in which you transition from one thing to another doesn't really matter that much. You don't know. I mean, there might be a pandemic. Everything could change.
yeah, that's such
Yeah,
such a good way to look at it. I really like that. So it's almost like you're thinking I'm building an orchard, not just a cash crop. So
yeah,
it's going to take a lot of initial investment of time
yeah,
and effort.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah. But
that's
I don't think what I'm doing is like brave and all of those things. It's just that it's my natural course of things. And I don't actually advise people to do this. I mean, don't change careers to follow your passion just for the sake of it.
yeah.
You know, it firstly, it's not easy. And secondly, you may not have to. I mean, maybe you can, you know, go keep going down the same track that you're on. Yeah.
I think that's really important point, because sometimes when you do that, the thing that you loved so much, that gave you so much joy, no longer does, because you changed the dynamic around it, because now it's all about where's my next buck coming from, can I make enough money
Yeah.
from this?
Yeah.
So I think that's very sound advice. So we're kind of coming to the end of this conversation. So what I want to ask you before I ask you to play your song, is to maybe just think a little bit about what sort of advice you want to give to someone who is maybe using this time where they've slowed down and reflected on the kind of life they would like to live, and maybe it had always seemed impossible before, but now suddenly things that we thought were impossible are suddenly proving to be completely possible, like people working from home. And so if from your perspective and from your own personal experience, what would you like to say to people who may be a little bit in your shoes now, thinking, well, maybe I don't want to go back to the life I had before, but I don't really know what life I want?
Yeah, I would say definitely do a bit of writing about what's coming up. If you are thinking about charting out a future in 2021 or whatever.
Do you mean like journaling?
Yeah,
Not writing at
journaling
all.
and
Yeah.
just putting your thoughts on paper really helps for me, because it just makes it more real, and it leaves your mind and keeps creating space for new ideas to come. So I would say that. I would say find people to talk to, mentors or peers, and I think a lot of people are doing that at the current time, because as we were just discussing, there's more time to connect with people that are important to you. So have those conversations, put some ideas out there, so a lot of stuff can come out of there. And in my experience, I mean, it'd be nice for the viewers to know that I worked with you as well, um, when I was going through the transition. So finding that sort of mentor or coach who can sort of give you some sort of structure, I think that was helpful for me working with you. So
Thank you.
so
No,
should you? Yeah.
sorry.
yeah, people should try and reach out to, um, you know, people who they think can help them in terms of, like, someone maybe from their industry, or someone from the industry that they want to join. So, those kind of things.
Yeah, that's really good advice. I'm just going to recap. The first one was to write things down,
Yeah.
because sometimes ideas pop up in your head, and if you don't put them somewhere tangible, you might forget, or they kind of, take
Yeah.
up space in your head, don't they? The second you said was make connections. And I think you're right, this opportunity is perfect to connect with people digitally. And the third one is to find someone as a guide or mentor on your
Yeah.
journey. And I think that third one is particularly important. It's hard for people to sometimes ask for help in that way. But I often find that it doesn't have to be transactional, like sometimes someone asks me for help, I'm very happy to help them. And I don't do that in anticipation of them doing something for me in return. Because the world, the universe works in this amazing way that if you help somebody, when you need help, someone just appears and helps you. And of course, then there's the more professional way of getting help as well, like you did, working with me. So thank you. I'm really happy that we were able to get you to a place where you're happy. So I think on that really happy note, I would love for you to now play one of your own songs. And before you do that, maybe tell us a little bit about the song, and if there's a kind of backstory behind it, maybe tell our viewers a little bit about that as well.
Yeah, for sure. So the song I thought of playing is called "Figure It Out." So I thought that's kind of quite connected to what we've been talking about, and it's about relationships and connections, and starting with yourself and then going out into the world and figuring it out. So I wrote this song while I was in India a couple of years ago. And I'm just going to do a simple acoustic version of that song.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Thank you. Look forward.
Just going to check that it's audible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can hear it.
Started out on your own, but now you're constantly dealing with all these relationships, and everybody's freaking out. You've got your own story to be told. You've given us sorrow, the strict version control. You figured it out, you figured it out. You smile to yourself cause you figured it out. You know it all, you know it all. You smile to yourself cause you know it all. I have got my own set of pretty little delusions. Won't you spare a moment of your time for my intrusions? I'll try to convince you, and I won't mince my words, and I will refuse to ever compromise. I figured it out, I figured it out. I smiled to myself cause I figured it out. I know it all, I know it all. I smiled to myself cause I know it all. I smiled to myself cause I know it all. I smile to myself cause I know it all. The more I try to hold on, the more I keep on slipping. Started out by drawing lines, but now I just keep tripping. No, 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 girl, no, don't say a word. I want to hear your silence.
Way, that was beautiful.
Yeah, I thought that was quite apt for.
Yeah, I love it. And actually, it's very, I love melodies that kind of I can remember, you know? It's quite a catchy tune as well. So you wrote this 2 years ago?
Yes, 2017 actually, 2018, yeah.
When you were still trying to figure it out.
Yeah, and I'm still trying to figure it out. We're all work in progress, you know.
Absolutely, absolutely. And listen, thank you so much for your time. It's been such an enjoyable conversation, such a musical conversation. It's been fabulous, and I wish you all the best. And I hope very much to have live events back on again, so I can come and listen to you play some more of your music, you know, somewhere in London soon.
Yeah, it was so much fun, and thank you for having me. And I know it's not the same as, you know, meeting in the same room, but it's nice to connect, and let's keep doing it. And I really love what you're doing in these sessions with different people on living with lockdown.
Thank you. Well, it's been interesting for me too to learn, you know, because there's obviously a common thread for everyone. Yeah. But each person has their own little flavor of how they're dealing with it. So it's been fascinating for me. So thank you, Rahul, and all the best, and wishing you a safe and, you know, hopefully enjoyable rest of your lockdown, and we'll meet again very soon.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.